And to comment on the words of Vladimir Putin, we're joined by, well, it's an honor to be joined by Vladimir Pozner. He was somebody who, when I was growing up, explained the Soviet Union to a lot of people in the United States, for instance. A journalist, still the host of Pozner on Russia One. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Before we talk about the bigger picture, just what does Vladimir Putin mean when he talks about looking at the future strategically?
Well, he's hitting the right buttons. It sounds great. It means that there is a strategy for the future, that something's going to happen, something important for the country, for the people. It doesn't really matter.
We Russians have to think about.
Well, we, it means everybody, all of us together. He's calling for a collective effort. He's saying, we have to do this. We have to put our shoulder to the wheel and get this thing moving. We have important things to do. That's basically what he's saying. And of course, you know, those are words that anyone can kind of accept.
And what is that strategy?
I haven't got the slightest idea, quite frankly. I think, on the one hand, of course, he does have the support of a great number of Russians because he gave them back their sense of pride, which they had lost for a while. But that's going to last for how long can that last? Now there's the economy, which is faltering, not doing well at all. People are living less well than they were living 10 years ago in sense of standard of living. That's gone down. So it's got to get some real change. Probably there's going to be a change in government. I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be a new prime minister. When Putin says that we have to do something very important, I think he's telling everybody we've got to work very hard.
He's already cleared out in the 6 months preceding the election some of the cabinet, some of the members of the staff who'd been there a long time, replacing him with younger technocrats.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think simply because they don't know, the older people really don't know how to deal with this situation. And there's an interesting point here, and that is that the leadership of this country is all Soviet. People born in the Soviet Union, went to Soviet schools, were members of the Young Communist League. They are, if you will, products of a system that no longer exists. And they're in a new system now. And they don't really know how to deal with it. And gradually he's replacing them with people who were not born in Soviet times or who were just kids when it was, you know, when they're 8, 9 years old. I interviewed one of them who's what's called here the Minister of Economic Development, 35 years old. Very different people. Not ideological at all. It's all about facts. It's about bolts and nails and what have you. And he wants that kind of person who really knows what they're talking about, know what a market economy is about, and know how to deal with that. And gradually you're going to see more and more younger people moving in, which is, in my opinion, the only hope for this country anyway.
Because this is the fascinating thing when you walk around Moscow, is that it is a European country.
Absolutely. Well, look, when you read Russian literature, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Chekhov, when you listen to Russian music, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, that's all European. It's not Asian. This is a European country, basically, with certain overtones, if you will, that come from Byzantium.
Right. And the other difference is that right now in China, they've got what they call the Great Firewall of China. They can keep out the West that way.
Yes.
Here, we had Daria on earlier saying, you know, she's on the internet, she speaks perfect English. Yeah. The younger generation, they're not impermeable to what's going on in the rest of the world.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, that generation, the younger generation, has grown up watching American movies, American serials on television, having the internet, being on YouTube, traveling. It's no longer a problem. Now the problem is only getting a visa from the country you're going to. But it used to be you had to get a Soviet visa to get out of here. So they're completely different. They're different, and they are very much like everyone else.
And yet they still voted for Vladimir Putin.
Well, of course, who else would they vote for? Look at the, all right, Navalny, who was attractive to a lot of young people, was not allowed to run. Whether on trumped-up charges or not, but he was not allowed to run. So who do you go for? Well, there's Ksenia Sobchak, who's a young lady and not very well known. And do you really think she should be president of this country? And you do have Putin, and a lot of people trust him because of what he's done. So, or they haven't voted at all, and not a few have not voted. In Moscow, you had, what, 52% turnout. It's not that great, you know. For the country, 67. But for cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, in the low 50s. So that also says something about, you know, who didn't vote and why didn't they vote.
Looking ahead, just one final question, which is that you look at right now this us versus them mentality. It's appearing again with the diplomatic standoff with Great Britain over the poisoning of the former double agent and his daughter.
Yeah.
Is it galvanizing people, or are they indifferent to it?
It is galvanizing people. I think that whole story actually galvanized a lot of people to go vote for Putin because of the way this thing has been handled. The tone of Prime Minister May, the ultimatum, if you don't talk to us tomorrow, then we're going to do da-da-da, we're going to go this and that. The Minister of Defense of Great Britain saying Russia should shut up and go away. People here react to that in the opposite way. And I think any people would. You can't talk to a country like that. And if you want cooperation, you have to say, okay, you want samples of this nerve gas? We'll give you samples and prove to us that it's not yours. You don't just say shut up and go away. Or you get this reaction that you now have in Russia, which is very anti-Western, and it's really too bad.
The standoff, it's all just going to die down? The standoff with Great Britain, the standoff over Ukraine, the standoff over Syria?
I don't know whether it's going to just die down. I spoke to the former Secretary of Defense of the United States recently, who was Secretary of Defense under Clinton, Bill Perry, and he says that the danger of a nuclear exchange is a reality today because of the lack of trust, and therefore the fear if you get even a false message, you're prone to push the button because you can't talk to these people anymore. It's dangerous. We're in a dangerous situation. And there's a lack of statesmanship on all sides. A lack of people, of a statesman getting up and saying, look, enough. Let's sit down and talk about this. The world is in a difficult situation. And that's not happening.
All right, so we have this Cold War-style standoff.
Yes.
But you also have the Internet, so it's not the Cold War.
Well, the Cold War was ideological. This is not ideological. This is different. So in that, it's not.
What is it then?
Well, it's a difference of interests, of geopolitical interests. It's also Russia wanting to stand up for itself and to be considered a great nation, as it always considered itself to be, and not a second-rate, losing Cold War, not interested, and so on. That's what's going on. And I don't know if you're aware of something called the Paul Wolfowitz Doctrine, which was adopted in 1992 in the United States, basically aimed at keeping Russia down. Well, that backfired.
All right, and Russia's not down. We're going to see, of course, how the next 6 years evolve. Vladimir Pozner, many thanks for joining us on France 24.
Thank you very much.
And